is an individual who worked at USAID as a Trump appointee from 2018 to 2019, who subsequently lost his job for blowing the whistle on some of the corrupt practices they had going on there. So it should be a very interesting conversation. What's up, Penny? What's up, Barbie? How are you guys doing?
I'm doing awesome. How about you, man? This topic is just absolutely crazy. I had no idea just how much waste was happening. I've been bothered by overspending on military and other government budgets for some time now. But understanding that we are paying to be propagandized is just almost too much to handle. What a week.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, they... Dude, so I'm looking at some of the funding and some of the corruption. Like, let me get to my bookmarks here. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. We have today it came out 35,000 jobs were being lost as a result of Trump and Doge and Elon cutting funding to Jordan. Like 35,000 people in another country with full-time salaries on your dime. I mean, you know what I mean? That's insanity. That's just one country. USAID has their claws in countries all around the world. And not only that, like not just independently, but also through UN, for example, and some of its subsidiaries. It's absolutely crazy how like tangled this web is and how deep the rabbit hole goes as far as what kind of money this is and where it's going.
On top of it, it's mostly countries that hate us. Like we're literally spending an exorbitant amount of money for the countries that hate us to hate us. Like they can hate us for free.
Can I chime into this?
Sure.
Yeah, so USAID, they don't actually just hire U.S. Employees. What they do per division, like let's say Eurasia or Africa or Eastern, yeah, depending on what division or what area, majority of their actually employees are local. And before the USAID website went down, I wish they should have left it alone. So for you guys to actually look up the hiring pool for these jobs is actually on taxpayer dollars. They're paying local nationals in each country to be a representative for USAID for whatever program. And I hated the fact that they took down the USAID website down, because I was like, oh my God, because
they needed to stop the flows. That way they can get a handle on things before they put anything back up, because they don't know what all is being funneled through as far as traffic to that website. So I absolutely don't blame them. But let me just kind of set things up real quick. Thanks for joining, everybody. Bottom right corner, if you could, please repost the space. Let's get as many people involved in this conversation as we can. And I want to go to some of these other things that I found as far as USAID goes in the funding. There's another one that says the Norwegian Refugee Council announced that it was suspending its activities in 20 countries due to USAID freeze imposed by President Trump. It received $150 million each year. So if you think about it, right, there's all of these like subcategories or sub-departments under the USAID that it umbrellas to, and each one of them gets annual funding anywhere from of like 10,000 or a few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, all the way up to hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. Like the amount of spending, and people are like, oh, well, it's not really much of the budget. Well, I want you to think about it like this. How many veterans do we have who are homeless or suffering from mental illnesses that aren't being addressed because there's not enough funding to take care of them? How much does it cost to secure the southern border? How much does it cost to, send kids to school? Or, it's like there are so many different things that this funding could go towards other than being like a CIA front to, impose its will across the world. It's absolutely disgusting. Tom, what do you think, man?
Brother, I just picked up on an article that we've got a professor where I went to school at Texas A&M in the Bush School that is using Politico to write an article about how USAID should not be defunded. It gets it published in Politico. Man, I cannot believe how far things have come in the wrong direction. This used to be a conservative university, and the professor 20 years ago when I was in class in 2002, Dr. John Robertson, the best professor ever at Texas A&M, great political science professor, mind you, very, very middle of the road, kind of what you want in a professor when you're learning. He made this statement to everyone. He said, this Politico organization, it's kind of left leaning here. I don't, just a very objective observer. That was in 2002. And so you can see in a very conservative institution where you had, like level-minded people that were not pushing a progressive agenda back then. You could see very fair what things were. I enjoyed my time actually getting my degree there. Now you have professors that are totally woke sitting here defending everything woke inside of Politico. And it's like they've done a total 180. And I keep seeing all this stuff from A&M about DEI and all these other government policies that are all top down that ruined our air traffic control situation, where 12 years ago or whenever it was, they decided we're not going to hire any more white people if you're too qualified. Like, what is that? Like, you're putting the country in danger. All these policies that have been instituted are putting lives at risk, actually. And somebody tweeted out earlier, this is the first time the government's gotten a colonoscopy. And I want them to go hard.
Boy, and they are just clamoring up and down and throwing a temper tantrum about this too, right? Like it came out today that actually came out over the weekend, but the U.S. Treasury had put out an internal email saying that they wanted to track and monitor all of the Doge actions inside and people who are associated with Doge outside through the agencies. That's crazy. The amount of, and this comes out with Dr. Moyar too, is he said during his tenure, which, he was appointed by Trump in 2018. He served until 2019 when they revoked his security clearance as kind of a reprimand for, blowing the whistle on what was going on. But the point was, one of the things that he highlighted was that there was a lot of holdovers within the bureaucracy of USAID from Obama at that time, right? So, we have 8 years of Obama, 8 years of people who leftist ideology who have infiltrated all of these bureaucracies, these agencies, and they are totally corrupt. So it's really crazy when you see the size and scale of the corruption. And so again, like with the Treasury, for example, it came out that that there are members, holdovers from Biden administration still within the Treasury who are actively working to subvert the will of President Trump. And this is exactly what Mark described in his book was happening during the first Trump administration. So if you're wondering, like, well, why is it so hard to derail the swamp? It's because they embed themselves so deeply and then they work to cover it up. There's layers of this bureaucracy. And the more that you shine a light on it, the deeper it goes. And it's absolutely insane. But Dr. Moyar just joined us. Welcome, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you as well. Yeah. So I was just kind of highlighting, your stint at USAID. And just for the audience, could you just kind of like give us a brief introduction as to what you did there and how you got there?
Sure. I joined USAID in February of 2018, which is noteworthy, particularly because it shows how slow the administration was in getting started. Huge difference from today, and that's why I think you're seeing them move so fast. But I became, in July, after being there a few months, became the director of the Office of Civilian Military Cooperation. I had about 55 people under my authority, some civil service, some foreign service, some uniformed military, a few contractors. And we had people all over the world trying to coordinate what USAID was doing, what the Department of Defense was doing. And this has historically been a problem because of what people sometimes call USAID exceptionalism, where they think they're kind of their own entity and sometimes don't remember that they're part of the US government. So we're trying to get them to work with the military. And I'd spent a lot of time with the military before, written a few books about it. And I expected I was going to be focusing on these opportunities for cooperation, but instead I found myself in a cesspool of corruption, and I ended up spending most of my time dealing with corruption, bad leadership practices of my predecessors. Within a few weeks, I had information on 5 different people engaged in waste, fraud, and abuse. 4 of them were people who worked for me, and then the other was actually somebody above me in the chain of command. And I went and talked with the agency leadership about this, and they said, well, you know, there is a lot of evidence of bad stuff going on, but usually what happens here is people just don't do anything about that. They just let it slide. They didn't explain why that was. I later figured out it's because you get in trouble if you do that. So, you know, but I had not come there to tolerate corruption. I was there to drain the swamp and advance the president's agenda. So I said, well, let's go ahead and investigate as we need to do. So they investigated it, and the most serious offender ended up escaping punishment by changing to another federal agency. It's kind of like the sex offenders who keep their jobs by moving from one place to another. In the meantime, he had his friends accuse me of divulging classified information, which was a spurious charge, but they used that to put me on administrative leave for 6 weeks while they conducted a sham investigation. And then they used that to fire me. And so I've spent the last 5 years trying to get restitution for my whistleblower claim, and the government has fought me every step of the way. And so I'm still involved in that as we speak.
So, well, we wish you the best in your pursuits to seek justice in that. I would want to ask you though. So, like, you get in there, you notice that that there's still like a culture of like again like the predecessor administration. Were they like openly hostile towards Trump during your years there? Like while you were in the room, like are you listening kind of like as a fly on the wall to them, speak subvertly about Trump? Like what was that like?
Yeah, well, a lot of times they were on their guard because I was a political appointee, but it was interesting. So one of the things that happened because they took so long to staff up the agency, I came into this very large bureau. They had had no political appointees for over a year. And so basically it was being run by the career bureaucrats. And they had kind of forgotten that they even had to report to the White House. And so sometimes I did hear them talking about things that they were doing to undercut the president. And one of the things they would talk about is finding ways to spend money that the Trump administration would not be able to reverse. And we've seen that at the end of the Biden administration kind of do the same things, try to spend all this money and commit it so it can't be overturned. The most egregious thing I came across involved humanitarian assistance in Syria. And humanitarian assistance, like just about everything else in foreign aid, can be different things. It can be abused, and it was abused. Certainly in some cases, Syria, you had supposedly life-saving aid being used to help terrorist organizations. So at a meeting where they apparently forgot who I was, or I was pretty new at the time anyway, one of the officials said, we've been talking about this Syrian aid, and the White House doesn't know about it, and we're going to try to the White House doesn't find out about it, because we think Trump might try to cancel it if he learned about it. Now, this is gross bureaucratic insubordination. The bureaucracy is supposed to carry out the policy of the president. It's not supposed to make the policy. But this was a recurrent problem at USAID, that the bureaucrats thought they knew better than the elected officials, and so they were going to push the policy through. Now, I wrote a report on this and sent it to agency leaders within USAID, and these were Trump appointees, but it turned out that they were not really very committed to the president's vision, and this was a broad problem we had. A lot of the appointees in the first term were not actually there to help implement the president's mission. They were mainly there for self-serving reasons. They wanted to get a job that could lead to bigger and better things and pad their resume. So that's one of the big differences we're seeing now is, and I think one of the reasons why you see this very aggressive approach is that going the first time and having these appointees trying to play nice wasn't working very well.
Yeah, and there's I don't know if you're on a microphone or something. There's something going on with your audio where it sounds like you're rubber banding a little bit. It's crazy that there's that level of insubordination within Trump appointed staffers, and we saw a lot of this, in his cabinet and some of the people who he had surrounded himself with during his first administration, because again, he's admitted this himself. He wasn't aware how deep the swamp was. He knew the swamp was there, but he didn't know quite how bad it was until he got there and got in. And a lot of his appointees were actually suggestions made by establishment Republicans around him during the first administration, which ended up being very problematic as he tried to drain the swamp. As he said. Go ahead. Are you there?
Yes, I'm trying a different mic now.
Are you trying to say something, Mark?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
No, I don't. Nope, it's not. Yeah, I can. It's just it's really broken up. It's really broken up.
Let me try. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, that's way better.
That's way better. All right, we'll stick with that. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, what you mentioned, I talk about this a lot in the book. So I had originally thought I was going to work at the Department of Defense when I was talking to Trump people, but they were one of the ones that were really trying to not hire Trump supporters. They had this idea that political appointees should be apolitical. And this ended up blowing up because you had people like Senator Tom Cotton and Senator Ted Cruz going to the White House and say, why aren't you hiring Republicans for these jobs? And you got a big fight over this. And that was a recurring problem we saw in many agencies. And it was not really addressed till 2020, I think fully addressed, when you had some John McEntee come in cleaning some of this up. We had an appointee who was the number 2 person in our agency who was about as swampy as you can imagine. She was married to the top lobbyist for the aid industry. And that was just a terrible decision to put her in. And she was actually one of the people who would cooperate with the career bureaucrats and go after people who are actually trying to implement the president's policies.
And so, and about getting these people removed, we've seen that, a judge placed a temporary injunction on Trump as far as firing the USAID staff that he had proposed or attempted to remove 97% of the workforce at USAID. And we saw that a lawsuit from the unions, the judge ruled to temporarily halt his firing of those individuals. Now, this is something I also remember from the first term, which was that a lot of the times when he was trying to fire the bureaucracy, the unions would step in, engage him, embroil him in these lawsuits. And some of them wouldn't even be over with until after his term had expired, which is something that he complained about before. I think things are moving a little faster this time. He got Doge in there right away, and immediately tried firing a lot of these bureaucrats, and he still is on the warpath as far as that goes. But what is up with these unions? Are you very familiar with what's going on there with them and their involvement with the bureaucracy and keeping these bureaucrats entrenched in Washington, D.C.? Mark, are you there? I can't hear you at all.
I don't hear him diligent.
He's not talking.
I can try. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
A little bit better. All right. So I had people from both the Civil Service Union and the Foreign Service Union in my office, and the unions, they're like most unions. If you think of the teachers union, they will fight tooth and nail to prevent almost anybody from losing their job. And so what I saw was people actually very rarely even try to get rid of people because you're going to face such a battle with the union that you're going to exhaust yourself and you may not even win in the end. And so I think that's partly what you're seeing here too, is when they're going to try to take this bureaucracy apart. Now, you can do a relief in force where you try to get rid of a whole bunch of people. And I think that's what they're looking at to try to do. Now, they got rid of 60 or put 60 of the top people on leave and investigated them. That, I think, is moving ahead. As far as the others, you have part of the problem they're having is that a lot of these people are living overseas, and it's very hard for people to move quickly, and if they have families. And so that is part of the argument. I do think there are certainly some valuable things that the agency does, and they're going to need some people to do that. You mentioned that they're talking about going down to 300. Now they say it maybe 600. I'm not fully clued in on all the plans. I think certainly partly what they may be thinking is they'll bring in more at-will employees to do a lot of this work, because at-will employees means you can fire them if they're not doing a good job, which is what you want. You don't want employees who can't be fired no matter how poorly they perform.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem, especially when it comes to our government. And you're still having mic issues. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I've actually got somebody here helping me. We're working on trying to get it. But that's all right. I can just mute your microphone while you get it sorted out, and I can just kind of have the conversation until you're ready to get it figured out. Yeah. So I just want to go to it's crazy that we're like, we're right here in the middle of the swamp. Everything, one thing that's good, right, is that Elon Musk and Trump have been putting out numbers pretty regularly about how much spending that they're cutting over there. And it's like every day, hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars saved here, tens of millions of dollars saved there. I can just imagine what the annual salary is of the thousands of employees at USAID, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. If you go to the X and you type in USAID, it brings up a list of all of the countries. Like there's offices in like a ton of countries around the world that USAID has staff at. And whether or not they're Americans or whether or not they are locals there, it doesn't really matter. Just think about how the cost of that adds up over time. Are you there, Mark?
Yes. Can you hear me any better now?
It's a little bit better. It's hard to tell unless you keep talking. But,
well, let me maybe.
Definitely better. Definitely better.
Okay, it's better. Yeah, we've tried to get another mic solution. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, you're highlighting a lot of really important issues. I think you had wanted to talk about the DEI programs as well, I believe, right?
Yeah. So it was my understanding that when you got there, even underneath the Trump administration in 2018, that you were subjected to some of the DEI policies. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, real quick, Mark, before you get started, it's possible your mic is turned up too loud. If the person helping you could check that, that might be the problem. Okay.
And maybe I'll try to be a little quieter, and maybe I'm getting a little too boisterous. So I got there in 2018, and what they should have had was a orientation for political appointees and saying, you're new to this agency. Here's what you need to know. Here's how people are going to try to stab you in the back. Here's what you're actually supposed to be doing. But we didn't get any of that because it was just the operation was not that well organized. So all we got was the standard employee induction. And the standard employee induction included what is known as the privilege walk, which was something that was new to me. But if you Google it, you'll find things. I mean, you'll find some really astonishing videos. You stand in a line and you have either your own identity or they give you an identity. And I was given the identity of Scandinavian woman. And so when they read these statements, I either step forward or step back. So there were things like, employers are less likely to offer me a job because of my identity, or I will be treated differently because of gender stereotypes. And so there was one white guy, so he ends up at the front, and I'm kind of second because I'm the white woman who's ahead of most of the other groups, which were various indigenous groups or sexual minorities, or whatever. And so at the end, you're supposed to look and see where you are, and then you say, "Oh, look, the white guy is more privileged than everybody else," and now we have to talk about it. And the idea that some people have got certain advantages of life is something that, for one thing, you don't really, as an adult, need to be told that, but it's also seemed intended to try to perpetuate identity politics and, extend this idea of the spoil system where you have to redistribute wealth. And so what's really astonishing about this is that the Trump administration had been in power for over a year. So they should have, by this point, purged all of this stuff. And it's not until 2020 that they actually get around to doing that. So that's partly why you see now that from day one, they're really aggressively going after this crazy DEI training, which, of course, as soon as Biden people came in, they rehired DEI consultants and spent all this time in these sessions and having people talk about white rage and all of this thing and just wasting taxpayer money. So that's one of the first and most important thing they've done.
So let me get this straight. You had to role play as a Scandinavian woman who wasn't quite at the top of or at the bottom of the victimhood totem pole, and had to illustrate how you were oppressed when you tried to apply for jobs. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone had this role to play, and the thing is supposed to show that, white male has the most privilege, then, the white female.
It is so absurd.
Yes, but that's how this whole thing works. And of course, we've seen this was supposedly going to be good for relations among people, but we've seen wherever it's implemented, the kind of stuff is divisive and actually pits people against each other, and you create resentments. And then you have the people at the behind, who are further back in the line, are demanding to know why they didn't get to be up there, and then they need to be given something to satisfy them. And in general, just perpetuates this idea that we should view ourselves victims of our circumstances rather than doing the best we can given whatever life has thrown at us.
Yeah, the oppressed narrative, it's Marxist ideology at its core, rampant during the Obama years, for sure. And yeah, it made a strong comeback during the Biden administration. And I wanted to highlight something that you said. You said you were wondering why, that far into the administration, the DEI offices were there. And I think something that people don't take into account was, one, obviously, Trump had the wrong people around him during his first term. But two, COVID also derailed a lot of his agenda during in 2019, especially, right? There was a lot that was derailed during that, and I would even argue that it was used to supplant him for the next election. And so I think that there's a lot to be unpacked there as to how entrenched. So if people don't know, there were firms, complete DEI firms full of people whose entire job was to create this DEI agenda and working with the HR departments of all of these various companies and industries, both in and out of government. And they would create these like programs within each department that the employees would have to follow, these seminars, training sessions, as Mark just described, role playing a Scandinavian woman to show how oppressed she was as opposed to the white man. Absolutely insane. That is so crazy. And if you guys don't know, Mark's highlighted that in his books. You're an author. I think he's got like 5 or 6 different books out, right?
Yeah, well, the most recent one is Masters of Corruption, which is about my time at USAID. But I'd written 7 books before that about mainly about military history.
Yeah, so the one of Masters of Corruption, and that's the one that I was reading synopsis for, and it is sold out on Amazon. I tried to get it, but I just got one via your link. That's up in the Jumbotron. If you guys want to check it out, definitely do. It's sold out, so obviously it must be pretty good. But yeah, it's insane to me that we live in a society where DEI, which is really just reverse racism, was so widely accepted, and it's really great to see it end. Mark, I got to ask you though, as you're watching Doge do its work with USAID and Trump, did you feel vindicated at all? Because I know that there was a lot of, you lost your job as a reprisal for highlighting what was going on there. Do you feel vindicated for the findings that are coming out about USAID and Doge?
Yeah, I do think there is some vindication. That there were a lot of bad people who I describe in the book, and they have been sidelined. Fortunately, these are people who are part of the problem, including people who are supposed to enforce ethics and rules are actually some of the most corrupt people, and that's why this goes on. Another interesting thing, and we far from getting to the bottom of this, when it comes to things like DEI, so you've probably seen they're publishing numbers. Look at how much is being spent on DEI consultants. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. And there, I think those contracts will get canceled immediately. What's less obvious, and it's going to take more time to figure out, is that under Biden, they made a systematic effort to infuse DEI into just about everything they did. So let's take, for example, say we are doing a $20 million business development program in El Salvador, and you look and say, oh, well, okay, $20 million to support business. They'll get some employees. Those people then won't become illegal migrants. Okay, we can see why we do that. But what you don't know, unless you actually go dig into this, is find out a good chunk of that money has been set aside for DEI supplemental activities. Targeting this to specific groups, forcing people to sit through these indoctrination sessions, and so that sort of rot is going to have to be pulled out, and it's going to take a while to do it.
Yeah, and it is going to take some time. I don't know if anybody up on the panel has any questions for Mark while we have him. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have him, but go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks, Diligent. Appreciate Penny, Insurrection, Barbie. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me. Hi, Mark. Thank you for all that you've done and everything that you've exposed. I just want to point out there's an element here that I think is really important. So simultaneously to them forcing the Trump administration employees to go through these DEI trainings, there is a nonstop narrative in the media that Trump and anybody associated with him is a white supremacist, they're racist, and they are constantly publishing this, right? Like every single day, there is a story about how Trump is racist, how Bannon, is the head of the white supremacy movement. And that element is really hurt the administration, right? Because if you have people who aren't really on your side, right, but they got hired because this bureaucracy where, immediately, I think it's like you have to hire 20,000 people right off the bat. Right. And remember, it was the people strategically placed in the White House. Right. So you had Steve Bannon, who's a total honey badger, totally wanted to break the system. But then they go and they put Reince Priebus, right, head of the RNC, total squish, sorry, guys, I'm sick. Total rhino. That is every time Steve tried to do something, there was Reince Priebus shooting it down. So it wasn't only the people in the bureaucracy, right? It was the people in the bureaucracy raising it to the people above. And then you had the strategically placed people who weren't allowing the information even to get to Trump. So it wasn't just like these people were like scattered throughout, like they were strategically placed in positions so you couldn't even make those changes that need to be changed.
Yeah, and that was a huge problem. Actually, one interesting story, which I haven't shared before, but since you mentioned Reince Priebus, we had within each agency, you'll have what's called the White House liaison, and they deal with the presidential personnel office over in the White House. So the White House liaison at USAID, for most of the time I was there, was somebody who was not well respected by just about anyone in the building. She actually had the job because she had been a babysitter for Reince Priebus. And so there was a lot of concern about her and others. Yet you had this RNC faction, and a lot of the people who got in early on were RNC people. I mentioned earlier, you had a lot of people who weren't there for the right reasons. And now, not everyone who came from the RNC was self-serving or uninterested in the mission, but it was a huge problem. And so we didn't really get around to it. I mentioned the number 2 person in our agency, Bonnie Glick, who helped get me railroaded and was also married to the top lobbyist in the aid industry. She didn't get fired until November of 2020. So it took a long time to kind of figure out who were the real friends of the White House.
It's crazy that it's really sad that it took that long too, because well, I mean, at least now, Trump has really dug his heels in to get in there ahead of it this time, right? They really aren't wasting any time. I'm incredibly impressed at the pace they're moving to gut the swamp and the bureaucracy, and the pushback has been glorious. The left, the Democrats have been losing their mind, and don't think that Republicans aren't in on it. There is a Kansas senator who was saying that he was pushing back on the breakdown of USAID just a few days ago, because a lot of, and people don't understand this, a lot of the foreign aid, they get kickbacks, right? So some of the funding from USAID goes towards like farmers, crops and stuff that get shipped out to some of these other countries, and the taxpayer foots the bill. So if they want to send, let's say, food to Africa, which I understand there's people in Africa might need food, like Mark said earlier, there are some legitimate or good things that have come out of the agency, but there's just so much bloated bureaucracy and corruption that the funds are getting misused, and people get kickbacks out of it. And I think that's something that Trump seems to become more increasingly aware of the more he talks about it. And it'll be interesting to see what investigations come out of what's happening at USAID and FEMA. Let's go to Miss Lou. Do you have a question for Mark?
Hey, Diligent, Penny, Barbie, thanks. Yes, Mark, I'm looking forward to reading your book. Did you know Rich Higgins? Did you know him at all?
I did not know him. I think he got there right around when I was
just
fired.
Before you. Yep. Did you have any interaction with the NSC when you were in USAID?
No, that's an interesting story too. So one of the things we eventually found out was that this Office of Security, which caused many problems, one of the things they did was they deliberately slow rolled the security clearances for the appointees. So I was told my clearance was going to take a few weeks. It ended up taking close to a year, and until you got that clearance, couldn't go to the NSC meetings. And that was very deliberate because you had career bureaucrats who wanted to be the people going to those meetings. And of course, as I'm sure you know too, you also had problems there with how many people with the NSC were supporting the president's agenda. But personally, I was not able to. I should have, but thanks to this bureaucratic subterfuge, I was not able to do so.
Just one little last point. Thank you, Mark. I'm reading, as of recent data, USAID has over 982 active partnerships with more than 4,300 private sector NGO entities globally. I mean, and there's 1.5 million NGOs operating in the United States. How the hell does that get managed?
Yeah, great question. You raised one of the biggest problems you've had with USAID is that it funds this network of NGOs, and they are overwhelmingly on the left. And a good indicator of that is when you look at when administrations turn over. So 2016, Obama leaves, Trump comes in, all the USAID political appointees, they go work into leadership positions in these big NGOs. And when Trump leaves in 2020, those appointees, including me and many others, those guys won't hire any of us. And so USAID is to some extent just a way to prop up these massive left-wing engines. That's part of why I think they've decided just to take a sledgehammer to the whole thing, because it's funding those groups. The other group that it's giving tons of money to that it really shouldn't be is the United Nations, because they do a lot of the implementing for USAID. So I think we're going to see, once the smoke is cleared, they're going to be finding new people, new organizations to work with for what the aid programs they decide to continue.
Yeah, and that's something that I like. What I found when I started to look into, I think it's called the World. It's like a World Food Effort or something like that. And it's a subsidy World Food Program. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, it has an E at the end of it and 2 M's, so it kind of threw me off when I first read it. I was like, okay. And it turns out that it's actually a subsidiary of the UN. And that's exactly why I forget which senator it was from Kansas, I'll have to look, who was clamoring on about pushing back on Trump's closing of USAID, because a lot of the money is funneled through the UN for humanitarian services, right? And so they kind of get you at that, right? They're using this shield of false empathy to funnel money into these NGOs who we know, like, for example, the NGOs, Catholic Charities, who are actively participating in human trafficking into our country at the southern border and facilitating the invasion, right? There's so many nefarious deeds that these NGOs are involved with. The decoupling through the UN, though, I think that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, Mark.
Yes, and another problem you had, and this is also, again, the Office of Security, which was involved in all these nefarious security clearance actions, they also are supposed to be the ones who vet the organizations that are funded to look to make sure they're not involved in things like terrorism or human trafficking or illegal immigration. And we found, and some of this has come out in the last few weeks, that they simply have ignored those requirements, and some of that, I don't know how much but some of that certainly came from Samantha Power when she was leading USAID, because she's had a history of doing this. And so I think we're going to find out. It's another thing that's going to get unearthed as we go forward is all of the bad actors in this space, and all of the bad things they've been doing is going to, I think, slowly come to light here.
Yeah. She became a multi-millionaire during her tenure over the agency. Absolutely insane. That is so crazy to me, that how rich these people get and how they aren't held accountable. I don't know, Mark, you might have time for one or two more questions.
Yes, yeah, one or two more. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go to Penny and then Earth.
Hey, Mark, you mentioned that you witnessed when you were there people sort of subverting, trying to set things up such that the Trump administration wouldn't notice that it was coming in, things like that. Did you catch anyone that was, potentially receiving kickbacks or had any sort of incentives for hiding this stuff? Have you been surprised by anything that's been released as Doge has dug into this? Is there anything that really caught your attention?
Yes, well, Doge and the State Department haven't really put out much in the way of details yet, but I do think we're starting to see evidence of this, and a lot of it's going to come out. You have, I think, two fundamental things working with the bureaucracy and why they're motivated to conceal these things. One is ideological. They most of them think that Trump is a bad guy. They don't like policies, and they think that they ought to use their influence to override what the president wants to do. So, a lot of activists and activist mentality, even though bureaucrats, that's not what they're supposed supposed to do. They're supposed to follow orders. And then the other part of it is greed. There is, a tremendous amount. Again, a lot of this will eventually get uncovered, I think. But you have people who, it's very common for people to work in the agency for a while, and then they'll give out they sit on these panels that award contracts, and so they'll award the $50 million contract to mega contractor X, and then 6 months later they leave the agency and they get a nice job over there. And most of that, I think, has gone unreported or uninvestigated. And part of the problem too is you have an inspector general who's been asleep at the wheel, and I know that they get a lot of complaints about this stuff, and oftentimes they simply don't look at it. So one of the things I know they're doing is to go back through the old inspector general complaints and find out what people have been talking about that's been swept under the rug.
Thank you for that, Mark. Penny, did that answer your question?
Yep, that was great. Thank you, Mark.
All right, Earth, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mark. I'm wondering if you had insight perhaps into how climate envoy John Kerry and later John Podesta had to do with programs with the climate and those UN institutions, more like the World Bank, perhaps a special district that were involved with the USAID, creating a certain framework to later have sustainability-linked loan develop those regions, and that sort of like feed-forward scheme.
I would say this is a problem in the first Trump administration, because the Obama administration had been pushing climate change through all sorts of programs against kind of EI, where we're going to infuse this in all sorts of things. And so, if you want to grow the economy in Kenya, well, let's focus on something that has a low carbon footprint. And, a lot of this is just crazy because we're talking about people living on the edge of subsistence in countries with not a lot of industrial output. Climate change really shouldn't be their priority. And a lot of people kind of look at the United States as being kind of silly by pushing climate change in a lot of these things. And so what you had after Trump comes in, especially because the bureaucracy ran things, is they would simply put new labels onto the climate change programs to make them seem more palatable to Trump. So the last the head of USAID in 2017, appointed by Trump, said, okay, we're going to focus on self-reliance. That we want to make countries self-reliant, so they're not just relying on aid all the time, which makes sense. You don't want a perpetual dependency, which is kind of how Democrats often operate. And so what you would see is that these bureaucrats would say, okay, well, this is no longer a climate change program. It's a self-reliance program. And they'd probably get away with that for a while. And if they were pressed on it, they'd say, well, you can't be a self-reliant country unless you're adequately addressing climate change. And a lot of that stuff was allowed to persist. Now, sometimes people pursued it vigorously, things would happen. I said some of us who took our job seriously hunted those sorts of things down, but too much of that was allowed to go on. And so I think certainly that experience has informed what we're seeing now. And yeah, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk with you at all. I see some other people here who I've seen and admired on Twitter, Insurrection Barbie in particular. So thank you all for having me. And there's a lot to be done, but I think USAID is one of the first big steps in figuring out and reforming, overhauling, and stopping corruption within the federal government.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And guys, make sure you check out Mark's book. The link is up in the Jumbotron. You can buy it directly from the publisher there. It is sold out on Amazon. And so we really appreciate your time.
Jump in for a second before he leaves. Dill, I just want to tell you.
Go ahead. Yeah, real quick.
One quick thing, Mark. What you just said there at the end is the most fascinating thing, I think, certainly to me and probably to many listeners here. Like explaining the tactics that are used to try and sneak this stuff in, which are things that none of us would have even dreamed of. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, self-reliance. That sounds like a great thing. And it's sort of thing that most people who identify as MAGA would be like, that should be priority one. And that's how they sort of, twist twist the agenda behind the scenes and are able to pitch it. If there are more things like that, I'm sure we'd all be dying to know, like, what other tricks of the trade they had. I don't know if you have any more time, but I'm sure we're all dying to know more tricks of the trade that have been employed to try and push this agenda forward behind closed doors.
Great, thanks for that. And and there is some more of that in the book, but also try to put some more of it up on X and other media. Thank you again, all, for having me.
Thank you, and look forward to having you again, Mark. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I think that's really good, is to get an insider's view of the tools of subversion, because that's what we're up against right now, right? That's what we're going to be up against as the scrutiny of Doge is laid down on these bureaucratic agencies, right? They're going to try to hide. We see this with legislation where they will call a bill one thing, but it means the complete opposite. And the same thing goes for these bureaucratic programs where they will rename it and hide it and then run cover for each other until we're like, all right, show me the receipts. Like, the level of scrutiny that's going to be a need to apply here is insane, especially when you think about, how they will rename programs. Like, that was a really good point to highlight. Good logic. Do you think that we're going to be able to get it done in 4 years?
Well, what's interesting, ironically, is it seems like we're finally starting to learn the same tricks of the trade. In that, a lot of people ask about the legality behind Doge. The legality behind Doge is that Trump took a program that was passed under the Obama administration called USDS, which is, I think, United States Digital Services or something like that. And the objective behind it was getting more efficiency out of our cyber networking. And he basically took that same thing, just changed the D from like digital to Doge, and said, this is all about efficiency. And all of a sudden now it has the fortitude of being an actual act that is just being reinterpreted by the Trump administration. I don't recall any other Republicans being so creative in how to just say, you know what, I'm just going to interpret the statute the way I want to. And it's nice to see it start working for us, but it's very informative to learn behind the scenes what those nefarious actors in the executive agency are, how they employ it so that they are exposed and we can be more diligent about it.
Thanks for the shout out. And we absolutely will be more diligent about it. Go ahead, Barbie.
I think the problem we're having is the judicial system. And I'm not saying it's like a problem that's not fixable, because I do think this is going to end up in the Supreme Court. And I do think that a lot of these will be decided in our favor, but they are really grinding down to a halt what Trump can do and what Doge can do. And we don't have 8 years, we have 1. So that is a problem. And I would like to see some Republicans start impeaching some judges. I'm being dead serious. Like, it's not just as a political message, but there's a lot of judges that have completely decided to ignore their constitutional oaths and violate judicial canons left and right. They issue orders that are absolutely unconstitutional, that have no rule, like no laws cited even, in the middle of the night. Like, we have to do something, because it's not going to stop. There's like 5 more lawsuits filed today.
So we can potentially...
Sorry, I actually had a question for her that I wanted to follow up on that point. Yeah, the impeachment process, while it's very easy, we can all get excited about the idea of impeaching these judges, and I could certainly agree with you that many of them seem to merit impeachment. The reality is, it's no easier to remove someone through impeachment than it is to remove a president, and that's never happened. Now, more often judges have been impeached. It actually has happened a couple of times, but the process is exactly the same. So if we're hopeful that we're going to get 7 of these senators to join on board and actually removing any of these impeached judges, I think that's wishful thinking. What I'm curious about to hear from both you, Barbie, and also the rest of the panel here is, conceptually, there's another way to go about it. The question is whether or not it's prudent for us to do that. And that is that if you look at Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution, it says that judges can be removed, will retain office as long as they're of good behavior. And what that means and how that's interpreted and what steps would be taken if someone is deemed to be having bad behavior, like if they're politically motivated hack, well, in that case, in theory, You don't need to go through the impeachment process if you can establish that they have bad behavior.
Jurisprudence.
And well, the question is, the problem with this is, once we fire that shot, that's similar to changing the landscape in a way of like packing the court. You know how like people say, like, if one side packs the court, the other side is going to pack the court. If we start removing judges because we say that they have bad behavior, you're going to see that as soon as the Democrat comes to power, Clarence Thomas, Alito, and hundreds of based good judges who are much lower levels that few of us ever heard of will be removed for, you know, bad, quote unquote, bad behavior. So it's a risky thing to sort of start changing the landscape as to how our politics work. But it would be an easier way to do it if we were so inclined to fire that shot. I just wanted to get your thoughts from really everyone on the panel here as to whether you think that that's what the times call for.
Can I jump in on this?
Well, I mean, Barbie, if you want to respond, because I think it was directed at her. And then go ahead, Brianna.
Let me just answer really quickly what my thought is. I don't know if that's the right way, because I'm always afraid to open new avenues to allow Democrats to screw us later, you know, because I feel like they will take that and run with it. But what I do think are good options would be, I'm not saying impeach lots of judges. I'm saying pick one, the most egregious one, and blast what they have done with hearings. And so the American people at least hear it and get some public support behind it, and then some pressure. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it'll open the eyes of a lot of people who maybe don't really understand how corrupt the judiciary is. At the same token, I would say that we need to start filing like ethics complaints. These are judges. You can file complaints, just like, you know, they destroyed John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani, and like any lawyer with all of these like investigations from the ABA. Like, we need to do that. I know it's not going to go very far because the ABA has been corrupted by liberals. All of these governing boards are all liberal, and that's the problem. But the third thing that I think we really need to do is pass some reform, which I know Mike Davis has been talking about. That's something we actually can do probably, and we should do. And then the last thing is they should file a writ. President Trump should consolidate all these cases, or Pam Bondi should consolidate all these cases and file a writ to the Supreme Court, like a common law writ. And this, you can't stop the you can't take all the fangs out of the executive branch. You know what I'm saying? Some random district court judge cannot put the executive branch to a grinding halt. It's unconstitutional. And I think that if we get it up before the Supreme Court faster by, like, you know, filing a writ and maybe consolidating some of these, maybe we can get some resolution faster. That's all I got.
They have a tendency to kick it back down the road. That's the only problem, right? Like, especially the Supreme Court, even though they are conservative, they do like to punt it down the road as much as possible. I've noticed when it comes to some of these, unfortunately.
Definitely with elections and anything that's like controversial, like immigration, but I don't think the administration of executive branch duties is something that they're going to punt. I just don't, because that's going to, in my opinion, that would delegitimize the court, and there's no political benefit for them to do it. There is a political benefit to stay the hell out of elections, you know, but not this. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
What do you think? Or go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to ask, we're talking a lot about the judges, but what about the employees, like, say, USAID employees or FEMA employees or anyone else who is intentionally, subverting executive orders? Is there anything that we can do to file complaints against them or add pressure that they, you know, be held accountable for their actions as well?
I mean, it's like criminal and it's like treason. It feels like, you know what I mean? You're actively subverting the will of the American people by being insubordinate to the president. Like that, like at the very least, it should cost you your job. At most, I think that, and this is something I think, and I posted about this earlier. You know, I think the Attorney General, we need to look into the legality of this. The left has weaponized the justice system to go after political opponents for things like protesting at an abortion clinic, right? They send SWAT teams of FBI to a pro-life activist's house and arrests him in front of his 6 kids on their property at gunpoint. Yet we can't get people to go after people for fraud and misuse of government money within the bureaucracy. It doesn't make any sense. I think that the AG really needs to take a look at investigating a lot of these people who are perpetuating the misuse of funds.
In regard to corruption in general, I mean, what
what do you guys pose as a solution? Because I see, if when Trump is out of office in 4 years, it's just going to be kind of a tit for tat kind of thing, and then all of the all of his executive orders will be null and void by, if hypothetically here we get another Democratic president in. So, I mean, what measures do you think like the public are really and practically going to take to prevent all of this from just being wiped out during the next administration?
I mean, the only thing that we can do is get legislation passed. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I have very little. My faith in the Republican Party is very slim. About as slim as the majority we have in the House right now, and so that's barely right. So there are some good actors, within Congress. There's just not very many of them, and but it looks like Trump has done a very good job at placing pressure on Congress to toe the line so far, and I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that trend continue. But legislation is the only way that we can make lasting change beyond, I mean, it's become common practice for the incoming president to completely rescind almost all of the executive orders of the previous, right? Biden left a couple of Trump's tariffs in. He left the remain in Mexico policy in for a little while. And so, but other than that, it's been pretty common practice to reverse everything that was done before. So yeah, legislation, we need to pressure our Congress to create long-lasting reform, as Barbie said. I 100% agree with that. We keep throwing Band-Aids on these problems and they don't really get fixed. And there's another aspect to this too, is that the actual bureaucracy we're trying to rid ourselves from, a lot of that money is going back into silencing us on social media, censorship efforts, things that actually affect our elections and who gets put in place as our representatives. So we're actually paying through these corrupt agencies to subvert our own will. It's insanity. Go ahead, Jen, and then we'll go to Brianna.
Yeah, honestly, I think the way we can make lasting change is to not focus on letting somebody else take the reins, not focusing on the Republican or Democrat Party, but to keep this momentum going as we the people. Like you said, you don't have confidence in the Republican Party. I don't either. And I've never been Republican, but I'm on the side of freedom and independence. And I think if we just keep this energy that we have going now on X and keep it growing like we are, in the next four years, I think we might be able to just get somebody else elected who will also continue this path. And hopefully we have a new future laid down, like the guardrails laid down, so we can do it. But we can't sit back and be like, oh, well, what can we do on the level of, being citizens? We need to start taking charge. We have to replace the bureaucracy and make it smaller so that we, the people, have control of it again, I feel like. And I think that's a really good way to look at it.
What do you guys feel like it should be like a state thing or a federal thing? And what resources are there that we can all kind of connect on to implement these on a more lasting scale?
I like the idea of the state thing, having a union like it originally was.
Go ahead, Brianna.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of points that I want to address. One, yes, power or centralized authority that's in the executive absolutely needs to be decentralized back to the state, local, and individual level. 100%, without a doubt, that's not even an arguable point at this time. Look, but here's the thing. We only have 2 years. We don't have 4. We have 2 years. And on top of that, whoever is in control of the administrative state is in control of the federal government at this point. Because even though Congress passes laws, right, and even if we get legislation passed, it is up to each administrative agency to interpret the laws that Congress passes into rule changes. So it's really, I mean, the issue within the administrative state is the biggest issue to tackle right now. And leading up to the Trump administration, it's important to understand how the Biden administration flooded the Federal Register with thousands of, essentially executive rule changes, restructuring and reorganizing federal employees right before Trump was inaugurated. So it's important to understand and to reverse this. Now, Trump did a great job of revoking these executive orders that were basically that outlined the new line of secession. However, what needs to happen immediately is Trump needs to make at least as many direct hire appointments as we have individuals currently in place that are promulgating rules throughout the Federal Register. Without direct hires that are in the Trump administration, we have absolutely no means of implementing the executive orders that he's passing, right? So we need policy people within each one of these administrative agencies to at least revoke what's in the current unified agenda that's set to register or set to publish on February 12th. For example, you can go and read it right now. There's a pre-publication on the Federal Register, and it's essentially a continuation of Biden's federal plan for equitable long-term recovery and resilience. It's not Trump's plan by any means. So we need good policy people in place, and Trump could do that through direct hires immediately. And instead of stacking or packing the courts, we need to stack and pack the administrative state. We need to get at least like 3 direct hires for each one that's been burrowed and embedded into the Trump administration, because let's face it, personnel is policy. Second to that, I would like to see the Trump administration start exposing, FEMA's 767 new census tracts, for example, and their American Relocation Project that was essentially created by the Atlantic Council in 2017 and called for a whole of government federal approach, regardless of who the president was, to relocating essentially the third world into the United States and then rezoning American territory and funneling people into the quote unquote resilient cities. I would like to see the Trump administration start exposing this along with, USAID and FEMA or DHS allocations essentially, and explaining how it all ties in with the people of Western North Carolina, why they can't rebuild, why people in Texas and New Mexico and California can't rebuild on their own private property because of FEMA's rules changes. And because of, this plan that they have to quote unquote combat climate change that includes importing the third world, funneling public funds and private equity into these resilient cities, and then moving people into these new census tracts to essentially create new special districts. And I mean, this is not theory or hyperbole. This is it, black and white in the Federal Register. This is all available for anybody to read. I mean, you can go online right now, look up FEMA resilient cities or community-driven relocation, and you can find all of FEMA's policy documents and how they have created, like I said, 767 new census tracts that will absolutely necessitate redistricting prior to 2026, perhaps, but definitely before 2028. I mean, this was a concerted effort to use public dollars to gerrymander districts and ensure that a Republican never won another election again in the future of this country. And I mean, that's a Hatch Act violation right there. I would love to see this administration start pursuing Hatch Act violations and going after these bad actors for violating federal law and using our public dollars to do it.
Yeah, the AG has got her hands her work cut out for her. Barbie, go ahead if you want to respond, and then we'll go to Jennifer.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. But I think I agree with a lot of what the last person said. The only thing that I would say is that I don't really want to stack the administrative state. I really want to blow it to smithereens. That's what I would like to do. I would like to dismantle its current makeup with the impoundment. I would like the Impoundment Act to get before the Supreme Court. I would like the cases regarding presidential authority and restructuring the executive branch to get before the Supreme Court. There should be no reason why we are controlled by an unelected branch of government that is nowhere in our Constitution, that is not accountable to voters. There's no way to bring these people to heel because they're insulated. They can't be fired. They can't be removed. They can't be, I mean, we can't even, they're telling you can't even look at the treasury payments. Like, it's just insane. Like, what's going on in the whole administrative state is insane. It all needs to be blown to smithereens. And I think when the court decided Chevron deference, that was our opening. This is our only chance because Donald Trump is the only one who has the moral courage and the political will to actually get this done. I don't know if we're going to get there, but I think that's the goal. And I really hope that we can get some of these cases before a Supreme Court ASAP. And I don't know, maybe that's what Pam Bondi's doing, trying to think of the best strategy because, you know, it's all about strategy, but we got to get moving.
Get moving with the quickness. 100% agree with you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I just want to point out. So, how I look at it, kind of, right, is that because of what Barbie just pointed out about you can't fire them. They're entrenched, right? They have all these layers that they've built over decades. So you wouldn't even know who's getting paid. Where is everybody going? And the only reason we know about all this, right, instead of doing hundreds of hours of research, is through AI and what Doge is doing, right? And I would argue that when we talk about the shadow government, when we talk about the deep state, I would argue the front organization for that is USAID. And they purposely set it up through USAID because you couldn't fire those people, because you couldn't go after them, right? So it didn't matter who was in the presidency. They had a redundant set of government agencies and government bureaucracy running through USAID that was funding all of the other things that they were doing in the government through the other agencies, right? So whereas this is like, okay, yeah, he got a hold of USAID, but what you don't understand is that was funding the impeachments. That was funding the lawsuits. That was funding all of these vectors that they are using to go after Trump and his people, right? Look at Letitia James. Look at Alvin Bragg. Look at all these people who were being funded by USAID dollars. So by taking out USAID, that is a huge hit that I don't think people truly understand. But when you look at it from the guise of that is the deep state, that is the shadow government, I mean, we just did Elon and Doge just did a brutal blow to their organization.
100%. Good.
I put something in the NAS, the Jumbotron, I don't know, whatever the terminology is. I did like a thread about this 3 days ago from an article I read that I thought was fantastic. And it's about how USAID was, that overhaul was a trial run for how Trump plans to dismantle the administrative state, how they're going to use that playbook. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. You guys can read it if you want. It's a little bit complicated, but very worth the read, at least the condensed version that I tried to put forward because the article is very long. But I feel like that is the game plan, and I hope that's true because if that is the game plan, I think it's got a good chance of actually working.
It does seem like these unelected people in the positions like USAID are the real problem. And the more that we can shrink that group of people, the better results we're going to get. That's exactly how things get done without us voting on it, without us knowing what's going on. I couldn't agree with Insurrection Party more. Let's just nuke this entire administrative state. It's awful.
I mean, as Vivek says, shut it down.
Yeah, it's got to go. It's got to go. But I'm just curious because, you know, the judges are actually going to be the gatekeepers on how fast that thing goes. You know, as Barbie brought up earlier, we have these judges who are ruling without even citing the law or precedent that they're making their rulings under. It's just very curious if we're going to be able to get through that. Go ahead, Southern.
The problem with trying to take out an appointed judge is you're going to have to get through the judge council first. And even if they try it at a state level for ethics complaints, it's still going to move to federal. That means Congress has to misdemeanors out for this judge and get the majority. Then they got to go to the Senate and get a 2/3 vote. We'll never get that in the Senate. So it's not the framework that's even going to strike fear into these judges because they're going to know this game going in. Can you muddy them up? Pick one that doesn't have the state power around? Because look at where the judges are coming from. New York, everybody in that system is Democrat. New Mexico, all of them are Democrats. So Democrats are smart. They're picking judges that the state's going to support them. and run interference. And then on a federal level, we don't have the numbers. So I think the direction we're going in with USAID and all of that, it has shocked the country. It has shocked the country. And this is our opportunity to act. And we have the fortitude of a president who came in with a game plan. This is extremely highly organized what he's doing, and he's got the right people. We have to cut the funding, because when you take money away, you take away a lot of the administrator state because they don't have a job anymore. Or secondly, they have been revealed. That's not good. And the third thing is, if they get put in front of a judge, what's the FBI going to do? They're going to go after who put them there and take people at the top down. So that's the fear factor. But administrative state is where we've got to hit hard, because I was expecting the deep state to be pretty darn special people. They're not. It's the money. It's the freaking money, and it's our money. It's not even George Soros's money. It's our money. Our freaking tax dollars have been used against us. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. There is no deep state. It's just channeling money around. It's a bunch of money bag people. And that's where we have to cut it off and break it and destroy it. And we could not have anybody better than Elon Musk to do this. And the reality is, we will never take these judges down because it's whack-a-mole. Every one of them is an Obama judge. Obama got a lot of judges in.
Well, wait a second.
Someone just.
Can I just ask a question?
Go ahead.
So when George W. Bush took over, didn't he mass fire all of the federal judges and no one batted an eye? Right. And that is saying that these judges were acting on behalf of the American people and not secretly taking checks under the table. They were not acting in good faith. Right. So we're arguing from the fact that these judges were operating in good faith this time. They have not been. And why can George W. Bush mass fire judges and no one bat an eye? Is it because he's deep state?
Uniparty. Bush and the Democrats are in bed together.
Okay, but this is the problem, right? Is we don't have to operate under this system anymore. So using the excuse of, oh, well, that's how it's always been done, or he's a Bush, that's just how they operate. Bullshit. Change it. That's how change happens.
But this change will take a lot of time. Laws.
Really? Because it didn't take a long time with Bush to come in and mass fire the judges and no one bat an eye.
Again, George W. Bush has a lot of information.
Respectfully, I don't think he fired judges. I think he fired U.S. attorneys, which is a very different.
Yeah. But George W. Bush is part of the deep swamp stuff. So that.
He's a part of the system.
He's part of the corruption. So we can't touch him. He's dead. But the reality is, we're living in today, and we have 2 years to kick the hell out of DC. And the way we're going to do it is take away their money and expose them. Like Chuck Schumer, he's having to apologize today about the Roosevelt Hotel because $59 million went. Elon went right on X complaining about it, and they were able to claw it back. But in the meantime, the information came out. Chuck Schumer helped set up that deal with the Roosevelt Hotel. They were in financial trouble, got a multi-year contract. Guess who owns Roosevelt Hotel? The government of Pakistan. The government of Pakistan. We're in bed paying Pakistan. Unbelievable. And this is a Chuck Schumer little encouragement deal. We're going to be humiliating and showing America how stupid and corrupt their elected long-term members are. Look at their behavior in front of DOE and USAID. They look like little spoiled children, arrogant, rude, unbelievably kind of trashy type people. And I'm going, this is the best we can do? I have had so many Democrats, because I came back to X to find new voters, moderate Democrats and independents, because I knew what Trump could do. And that's the reason I came back. And I worked my butt off when we brought in over 1,074 new voters for Republicans, for Trump. Well, they're all reaching, a lot of them are reaching out to me with their friends who are also those moderate Democrats. What they're seeing from my feeds and other people they follow is just how bad the Democrats are and how corrupt they are. But they're mad as hell because now it's their money that's being used to do all these horrific things. And that's how I see, for me, with X moving forward, educate to change behavior. Educate to change behavior, because we got to keep the votes. We have got to kick it hard for the midterms, or we're going to lose this momentum. And that's what I'm more terrified about, is the midterms. We have to work hard for that. But going after federal judges, they will slow roll it all day long because they're all in the same party. We have some Trump judges where we can get some wins. But guess what? The Democrats are going to go behind Trump's back like they did in New Mexico and New York. Nobody was informed on Trump's team that this was going on. And those judges both stopped it. Now, the one for New Mexico is only 3 migrants from Venezuela. It's not the whole group. So the media is trying to make it look like that all of them are safe.
Sorry, they weren't even scheduled to go to Guantanamo Bay. Do you guys know that? This is the preemptive law.
I know.
They weren't even on the list to go to Guantanamo Bay.
But Barbie, what scares me more is the Colorado raid. There was leaks out of the FBI. We have some really bad actors, and we cannot lose our ICE and good actors from FBI. They're going to do everything they can to disrupt this. We even have military coming out now saying they're not going to follow these orders for illegal immigration back out of our country. So there's going to be a swoop across there. But
Military people should be court-martialed for that. Sorry.
Insubordination.
No, I agree. I'm from 5 generations military, and I'm like, why is Millie not being court-martialed? It just stuns me.
But pardon.
Yeah, I got a pardon, but treason's a different game.
I'll be honest. This is exactly what I was saying the other day. We're not moving fast enough, and this is why. I said Monday you need to start handing out indictments. Next thing you know, Monday 8 a.m. you find out they're still spending money. This is exactly what I was trying to say. You have to start moving faster. You're not going to move fast enough to stop money movements. You're not going to be able to do it. You haven't dug deep enough, fast enough yet. That's what I say. You got to start indicting people. You got to start asking questions. You got to start calling people in immediately. I was not joking about that. It's not the fact that I had any information.
3 weeks? Do you know it's been 3 weeks? Like, I think people have a real high expectation of how things actually move in DC versus like what you think they do, because y'all sound like
the reality is it moves
saying,
slow.
I didn't get it fast enough. Okay, and how long have you worked in government? You worked at the White House lately?
How long have I worked in government? I worked in government for a lot longer than you probably think. A lot of the people that are actually sitting in the House, I actually helped with social media, and a lot of people got elected because of stuff that we had.
But it still doesn't move as quickly as you
think I know
it
doesn't. I know it doesn't, but I'm saying there's ways to move it faster.
The fact that the Department of Education is closed, DOJ has exposed all this. This would have taken 4 years in any other administration.
I'm not saying that they're not moving the right way. What I'm saying is that we can't stop the spending because what they're doing is so deep at a fraudulent level that all it took was one day you find one thing, and then next thing you know, by Monday they're spending another 59 million without anybody knowing. This is the problem. That's what I was saying. It's just not working because they have another way out, another funnel out. You have to start asking questions and start scaring people. Get them to snitch.
Okay, here's the statement here.
Well, I mean, that's the problem is that there's a lot of them. Here's the problem is that a lot of them are in on it, right? And these are ideologues. These are people who are ideologically aligned, right? They hate Trump. They hate Americans. They hate MAGA. And there's no incentive there for them to snitch. The reason why we have a USAID whistleblower right now is because he was appointed by the Trump administration. There haven't been any that have come forward since all of this has gone down. Actually, on the contrary, there were ones that were coming forward. I don't know if you guys saw, it was ABC or one of the networks, CBS, where they did like a blacked out interview and said that they were worried for their lives because Elon Musk had their private information and they were in fear of retribution because he had their information. Absolutely insane. Like they are not only doubling or tripling down on what they're doing, they are quadrupling, and they're using the media lackeys, the regime legacy media to do it, to spin narrative, and it's still happening. It's just more of the same. But getting them to come out, I would love for a current USAID to come forward and be like, you know what, all of this is true. I can give you more information. There's just no incentive there for them to do it. None.
And diligent. What I find interesting is, and this is a good thing, and this is a clap back on the gentleman about we need to arrest people today, is simply this. Doge knew immediately, announced it, and clawed it back. Those people will be held accountable. Now you can say, okay, you're the administrator we kept in place. Now we have you. And it's a lady, by the way. And she's going to be a little upset because the United States government is not something she wants landed on her. So that could create its own little interesting conversations moving forward about how things are done. People will come forward out of fear or loyalty to the country because they were quiet and tried to keep their job, or they're going to come through because they're being forced to. And that's not what I want. But whistleblowers were not protected under Biden. They were abused because most of it was around Hunter. But Trump is very friendly for whistleblower. You got Chuck Grassley that manages that. You have good people that people can come and be safe now as whistleblowers. We haven't had that in a long time. And that is so important right now. But they are, it just stuns me how stupid I was in not understanding how our money was moving around. I would have never looked at USAID.
Southern, I need to get to some of these other hands. Sorry. Go ahead, Barbie, and then we'll go to Tom.
I just want to say one thing. We need a scalp. We need to find a scalp, like whether it's somebody that we arrest and prosecute or it's a judge that we unseat or whatever. We need a scalp. One scalp sets the precedent. And that's what we need. We got to find a good candidate and make that happen. That's the only way to stop it, I think.
100%. Go ahead. Let's go to Tom.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have several examples, I believe, before it's all said and done, right? And I think that we're going to see corruption way beyond what we're seeing right now, USAID, once we get to the Pentagon and once we get to all these other agencies. Folks, do you know how many agents we have to go audit? We have so much money. You're going to be blown away. You're going to find out 2 months ago that right now we're spending money in some department and you're going to hate it. And you're going to go, oh my God, I can't believe we did that in February. We were there. We should have stopped it. Listen, this is a massive behemoth, the likes of which you can't even wrap your head around. It's hard to fathom the power and the purse and how much this is all spread out and how many people are involved, right? And so this isn't a simple task at all. It is probably the most difficult task any political party has ever taken on since the founding of our country, minus like the Civil War. I mean, this is where we're at right now. And so until you put it in context and take about 5,000 steps back, and take several deep breaths and do 4 or 5 yoga sessions, you're not going to even be able to realize what exactly is going on right here. I mean, that's the way I view it. It's monumental. It's epic. This is nothing like 2016. For people that are looking on from the outside in right now, and unless you realize the corruption that we've been able to turn over in the past few weeks and realize the power that we have right now to continue turning over that corruption and how that differs from where we were in 2016, then it's going to be hard for you to be comfortable with what's going on right now and the fact that we are exposing all this corruption. But just hang on tight. Every time we expose corruption, it's great. This is what you want to hear. You want to see all this stuff. Tell me more. Show me more of it. Show me all of it, right? And I'm not going to get upset. I'm going to say, thank you. Let's end it. And let's figure out how to make sure members of Congress are not allowed to go back to their districts and try to somehow defend this in the future. We're going to say, absolutely not. No, all this stuff that y'all did for USAID, here's all the receipts on every single bit of it. Do you regret your vote now? Go ahead and tell your constituents how much you wanted to vote for that. All you Republicans here, Dan Crenshaw, Luttrell, all these people that continue to vote for this crap. That is where you really make the difference, because once you take the funding away, Congress funds it, right? They don't tell you how to spend it, but they put the money in there. Once you take that away through the Republican Party and you get 150, 170 yo-yos out there are constantly voting for the establishment and voting for stuff like you said, once that is over with, the money is pulled and we've got progress. But we can never get that done in the first administration. And I am very, very hopeful that we can pressure our congressmen to keep this stuff from ever getting funded again at USAID and other places like the Pentagon. And
That was
folks,
a question that I wanted to ask him, but I didn't have time because he had he had a short time but his microphone was atrocious. I'm sorry for our listeners. That was really bad. But next time I'll make sure that he gets squared away. But anyways, the oversight, these agencies have congressional oversight. Where were they during the Trump administration? Why weren't they being held accountable then? I think it's because many of these Republicans are in on it. They're culpable. I think that's a huge part of the problem.
They were too busy impeaching him, Diligent, right? And I would argue that all of the impeachments, all of the lawfare, was funded through USAID, but also was used as a tool to keep him away from USAID, knowing that even though he's in office, they're still able to fund all of their nefarious shit through USAID.
And not just that, but they were also they were very hesitant about confirming his nominees. They were hesitant about doing anything because he was involved with Russia. They tied up his entire administration in fake nonsense and BS, and then because they didn't have the guts to actually act.
Yeah, I mean, it came out in a report that, according to Michael Schellenberger, that the impeachment was started because of a hit piece funded by USAID.
Go ahead, good logic. Good logic, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think Tom really hit the nail on the head. This is just the tip of the iceberg with USAID. I mean, that's $40 billion. The DOD is $850 billion. There's so much corruption. There was an interview which I actually stumbled on a while ago and recently where, what's his face? That guy from The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, was talking to a woman from the DOD, and even he seems to be getting red-pilled when she's like, yeah, the DOD has never been audited. You just don't understand what a real audit is, because there's no way for us to know where all our ballistic missiles are. It was insanity. It was insanity. So when they go through that, here's the good news for those of you who are frustrated by some of these woke judges coming out with terrible decisions. First and foremost, most of these decisions are more collateral attacks. In other words, it's a matter of saying, well, you can't get personal information and give that to Elon. Okay, so you just make sure it doesn't have personal information and you can still keep going forward. They're desperately trying to claw and find some way to slow this whole thing down. But the really good news I have for all of you is this. To the extent that there's an issue with freezing funds, which there was an order that came out today saying you can't freeze funds. Okay, that may be true. Technically, if Congress authorizes spending on certain monies, that's okay. Well, here's a newsflash for everybody. The current continuing resolution as far as funding our government expires on March 14th. That's it. So whatever spending we're having after March 15th, there is not a single statute which is covering any spending after March 14th. And they're likely going to, they're not likely, they're definitely going to have another continuing resolution. But you can have a continuing resolution which specifically carves out all the corruption that Elon and Doge happen to uncover between now and March 15th, or whenever the next CR is actually signed. So yeah, we might have to keep paying whatever stupid monies for Iraqi Sesame Street and for gas stations in Afghanistan that never opened. That may have to continue, but it's like, okay, whatever percentage of that is going per year, we have another month of that, a little bit more than a month until March 4th. As of the Ides of March, we shouldn't be saying beware the Ides of March. We should be like, get ready for the Ides of March, because that's when these slashes start coming into effect, because there's no appropriations that have been signed off by Congress for anything after March 15th, as of March 15th, 2025. So that's the good news. And the more that Elon can keep going forward and exposing his corruption, the more they can carve out from the next CER, and hopefully keep that CER for as short a window as possible, so that if he finds stuff in the next 2-3 months, they can, and the CER as of March 15th is only for 2-3 months old, they can revise it some more and keep slashing it back and slashing it back. That's the good news here. And then trust me, this is just the freaking tip of the iceberg. We are going to start seeing about hundreds of billions in wasted assets that hopefully we'll start pulling out of our budget on a yearly basis.
And also, just real quick on that good logic, those points are perfect. Under USAID, it's now up under Marco Rubio. He is running it now. So that is controlled. That is controlled. And he
Go ahead, Piotr. Wait, go ahead, Barbie.
I'm just going to say to Good Logic's point, which is a great point, we're going to really have to put the pressure on Republicans because they are just as corrupt as Democrats and they are just as complicit in the spending orgy that we have been witnessing. So we're literally going to have to be extremely obnoxious on a daily basis if we are hoping to get any of that done to the Republican Party.
You have to confront these lawmakers right now, and you have to ask them, hey, when you go to march for this, vote for the CR in March, are you going to vote to fund all this crap? Yes or no? And if they look at you like they just got caught with their pants down, turn your phone on and start recording them and ask them the same question again very calmly, and just keep on doing it and keep on doing it and put it on the internet for everybody to see. Every single one of these Republicans should be confronted in public right now about all this funding. And the fact that our media doesn't do it, and the fact that I have to go out there and do it myself half the time is crazy. But everybody, get off your butt and go do it yourself. Our media is not going to do it. These people don't care. They want it to be funded. They'll in fact, if they saw me trying to ask Dan Crenshaw about it, they'd probably get between the two of us and try to run it off. That's how much they want this funding to continue. They do not want these congressmen exposed for funding all this crap. So do your job. We'll all do our job and we'll expose it.
Well, and that USAID money was getting funneled back to those congressmen through political donations, right? So even if they took $1 of USAID money, that's $1 too much. And don't let them be like, oh, well, I had to do it. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You knew exactly what was going on and you took the dirty money. You are responsible, even if it's $1.
And that's true, Jennifer, because if they knew about it and they didn't say anything about it, then they're part of it. How come we didn't know? We're Republicans.
Piotr, get in here.
Yeah, how's it going, man? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm exactly a whistleblower, but I've worked a lot with USAID from my time living in Washington. And I think a lot of what you guys have been saying is pretty true to Mark. The main problem with USAID and a lot of these agencies is lack of oversight and the amount of tiers, if you like, of this sort of stuff. So, for example, how it works is USAID is sort of the money pit, if you like, and then they designate or they have contracts, they have projects. And so different groups, there's a couple you can look into called Chemonics or DAI, which are partially private, partially public. And so they bid for the contracts, and then that obviously means wages, different sort of places that people have to stay. And then those companies often subcontract the projects or whatever else to local NGOs and activity bodies, whatever, in respective countries or whatever it is. The point is that this sort of trickle-down effect means that there's huge areas for potential inefficiency, or more particularly corruption and exploitation. So from my experience of doing this on the periphery, is that you get huge amounts of money being spent or committed to a project that it doesn't really need to be. It doesn't need to be like that if an effective amount of due diligence and oversight was there in the first place. But that's often quote unquote overlooked because it's it takes too much time and they want to get on with the project, i.e. it's a bit of economic and project mismanagement. So I think that in principle, the audits, if you like, and investigations or whatever into USAID are a good thing. I do think it needs to be reduced significantly. I mean, you've seen that, I think you guys mentioned it already, but the Afghan gas station, that was like $46 million spent on a basic piece of concrete, metal, and, well, pumps, or billions of dollars.
Or transgender training in Chile, or you know what I mean?
So I was coming to that one. So my friend of mine, he does YouTube. He's really good. I've sent him a message if he could come in. But he went to Afghanistan on a trip a couple of years ago, and he was just walking around Kabul, and he went to one of the local offices, and he found around the back all these manuals and folders from DEA, DAI, sorry, the group that I showed you, but was obviously funded by USAID, about diversity, equity, and inclusivity policies. Right? This is the biggest waste of money in the world, let alone in USAID, in governments. That's why we're seeing Accenture and private sector companies move away from DEI policies, because it's rubbish. You should hire people based on skills, not because it has to fill a fucking quota. Excuse me. Anyway, so yeah, 100%. And the last example I was going to give you was in Haiti, right? Part of the problem with foreign aid is that it doesn't often address the root cause. It's like a band-aid. So I think that aid is important, but if you're not going to address the root cause of an issue, i.e., let's say there's terrorism in sub-Saharan Africa somewhere, if you're not going to get rid of the terrorism and insecurity down there, then no amount of money you're flinging at the problem to educate people X, Y, and Z is going to solve it. Haiti was a problem when the earthquake happened. You had billions of dollars sent to Haiti, but because they didn't stabilize the government and there was gangs and guns and violence, that was wasted money. And the US taxpayers spent all that money for nothing, right? The Haiti is still a failed state to this day. So yeah, I resonate with a lot of what's been said already. I wish I'd been here for the guest or the whistleblower, because it would have been interesting to have a chat with him about that. But anyway, I'll pass back to you.
Well, I mean, he had mic issues anyway, so but we will get him on again. I'm in touch with him, and actually, that was actually pretty cool because people started DMing me other USAID whistleblowers to get in contact with. So I think we'll probably host another space on this in the coming weeks. I'll make sure not to schedule it ahead of time so I don't get the rug pulled underneath me like I did on this one.
Yeah,
shout out to Mario.
I can try and get you some contacts if you want.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Gaze.
Yeah, thank you. You know, one of the reasons I appreciate the Diligent lets me up here is because I feel like I'm just like an everyman, just like a normal, average American citizen. You know, I don't have the experience and the knowledge of many of the speakers. Like, you know, I'm not an attorney like Good Logic. I'm not a CEO or an organizer like Jennifer. I'm not in oil and gas or politics like Tom. So I haven't really commented on the USAID or tweeted about it a lot because I didn't understand it. But from what I do understand, it seemed like the United States was taking taxpayer money and sending it overseas to either woke programs or programs that just weren't America First or MAGA, or, you know, how are they serving the country? So I could understand why the Democrats are so up in arms about it. But we have a senator in Kansas that I think Diligent touched on, Jerry Moran. I don't know if he's a MAGA. I don't know if he's supported by Trump, who wants to fight against this. Now, why would a Republican senator be against the efforts that Doge and Elon Musk are doing?
Because it's not just about foreign aid. The money, so the monies are allocated to USAID and then sent to, like, for example, the UN. And so the UN will purchase resources or goods from areas or certain localities in the United States. So, for example, the senator, and I forget what his name is right now, but I had a post do pretty good on this. There was a senator that went against Trump. Let me pull it up, and he's a Kansas senator, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, yep, there you go. Yeah, so his constituency is in Kansas, and they sell crops, and so and USAID was buying those crops. They're actually shipping them out to foreign countries. So the money is funneling into USAID, out to these other organizations, and then back into the United States, where, you know, it looks like they may be getting kickbacks of some sort or another, or their donors are, right? And so that's exactly how it works.
diligent. Farmers actually are on these contracts where they do send food. The problem is it never really gets to the people who need it. And a friend of mine, major farm, actually volunteered to go. So he went there with 3 or 4 members from his church. And when they got there with everything, they had some people show up and they were American military, not in uniform, but with the swagger, and took everything. And he's sitting there going, no, this needs to go to the people. I want to get this to the people that need it. And they go, no, we've got that taken care of. And somebody pulled him over and said, please don't do this. They're never going to get it. It was just the agenda so they could get in. So the food was never going to go to them. But we have farmers here in the U.S. who are upset right now that USAID is on pause because that's how they make money. But what's happening is the product is not getting to the people who need it. It's probably 10%. But that's going on forever.
The front is USAID, right? Like it's not just foreign aid. This money it's like a slush fund, right? They put the money into USAID and then they take out of it what they need. And yes, it was supposed to be going to foreign interests. However, it was being put directly to go after Trump as a shadow bureaucracy of our own government. Right? That's why Liz Cheney and people like that are so upset, is because even though Trump was in office, right? Even though he was able to get a couple of his people into key positions, right? They had a shadow of that position where they were actually running everything through these positions and then funneling the money from USAID back into the Democratic Party, right? So it wasn't just that we're funding nefarious things and the sexual reproduction of fruit flies in Jamaica, right? We are also funding a shadow government that was being used to take down President Trump and his allies.
Yeah, the USAID funded money over to, it's a 5-letter, OCC something, but they're kind of pose as news media, but they're actually part of the CIA. And what they do is work with regime change with social media. They went to them for Trump to take him down. And we funded it with our taxpayer dollars.
Well, and not to mention that we also funded regime changes in countries that didn't really need regime changes. The U.S. government just wanted to control the natural resources, or they had something that they wanted in that country, right? So in the name of quote unquote democracy, we would go in and be like, okay, your country has an AIDS problem, right? And we would send these NGO people, right, who are not just NGO people, they are also operating for the US government to go in and subvert the country's government. And then they'll send in the color revolutionaries like Norm Eisen and other people to go in and actually do a color revolution and take over the government of that country, right? Ukraine is a perfect example in the Maidan revolution in 2014. Right? It's not just that they were funding Trump's demise. We were going around the country of the world as the bullies, as the quote unquote democracy police, and overthrowing legitimate governments.
Well, we need to
and unsanctioned too, by the way. I need to get through. I got some people with their hands up, you guys. By the way, I just want to shout out, we have some news up in the Jumbotron. Tom, if you cannot put stuff up there. Staffers showed up today for work. I don't know if anybody has talked about this yet. It's up in the Jumbotron. They showed up for work today because you said, the judge placed an injunction on Trump firing them. So they showed up for work today and were immediately turned away because the Trump administration stripped the agency of the lease at the building. I fucking love that, bro.
Trump.
All right, so if that is so genius, right? Like, okay, so you're gonna make me pay them, but we're still not gonna let them cause any more damage, right? Like, people are complaining, oh, well, they're still getting paid. Well, that's the judge's decision, but at least Trump's keeping them from causing any more damage. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to bring up the fact that Tucker Carlson had our good friend from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, on the program 6 years ago. That's what I had up in the jumbo. It's the only reason I posted it. I wanted everyone to go back and listen to what Tom Fitton said 6 years ago and notice how much younger Tucker Carlson is. He has no gray hair in it. But it's a fantastic conversation. You need to go watch that. So go look it up. It's on Tom Fitton's Twitter feed.
Yeah, Tom has been raising the alarm on this for a long time, and people have their opinions about Mike Benz, but Mike Benz has been too for the last couple of years that I've seen him. A lot of people have been raising, because a lot of the censorship shit, it goes back to them as well. It's really crazy how intertwined all of these agencies are, and their efforts to subvert the will of the American people. It's rather disgusting. Go ahead, Piotr, and then we'll go to Miss Lou.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of relates to what you just said. I'm not going to go as far as what some of the comments have been said. Maidan was not a color revolution, but it is a case whereby you have a revolving door. So people work in the government, they work in state, they work in USAID, they then work in, I don't know, a private sector corporation like a consultancy. It's a revolving door. People jump across and it becomes quite cliquey and a bit of a circle jerk, to be honest with you. I, for one, having been in Washington for 5 years, I never felt I was fully accepted because I have a Russian name. I have partially a Russian background. So there was always a sort of like, we're not entirely sure we want to let that guy in because he might be a deep-seated spy for the Kremlin or something like that. So it is very much like that. And that's why I think Trump's is a refreshing point for many people, because he's anti-establishment. And, a lot of people are anti some of the more, I don't know if you want to call them conventional or whatever, Republicans like Mitt Romney and the Democrats, because these are part of the same sort of spectrum of the politics, that they still think that a lot of these institutions are okay, when sometimes you do need to take a hammer to them and severely change and shake up the system. I think there's been too much complacency.
Who are you, and what have you done with Piotr? I don't find myself agreeing with you.
Yeah, well,
I didn't expect you to agree with me, Piotr. It's okay.
I do agree with a lot of what you guys said. I mean, as I said, I don't agree with everything. I still think USAID has a role. I don't think getting rid of it completely, but it's too big, and there is too much expenditure on stuff that doesn't make sense, and in very inefficient, long-winded, bureaucratic systems. So no, I do think that you can save a lot of money. I just wonder how far is too far. That's all. I guess I think.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking it down to the bare bones and starting with what you need, right? This is something that Elon Musk does with his own companies, which is strips them down, lets things break, and then fixes the things that need breaking, and then the rest is gone, right? And that's exactly what needs to happen. Of course, some things are going to break along the way, but the balance there is like you're going to break far less things than what's already broken, and that's exactly what needs to. That's exactly needs to happen.
It's the incumbency fatigue thing, right? It's the fat cats sitting at the top of, be it foreign aid or private institutions as well, right? A lot of them, I'll give you an example. So there's a gentleman who was our foreign secretary or shadow foreign secretary called David Miliband. He's now the head of International Rescue Committee, which I personally do think does do incredible work. It's not an American organization. I don't think it's nationally aligned, but he was part of the British government, and now he runs an independent, supposedly, organization. So it shows you how people from senior positions do get picked up and jump from one thing to another, and often, therefore, the ability for there to be true independency and therefore accountability is much harder and easier said than done. So, yeah, I think it's good for a shake-up for USAID, but, I wonder but the Pentagon is going to be a lot harder as well. I would just say that. Like, a lot of discretionary expenditure where Musk wants to make some of the biggest cuts, a lot of portion of that is defense spending. So if you guys want to increase defense spending, or Trump does at least, that's going to be a bit of a challenge because it goes against what he wants to do as well. So, yeah, that's all I'd say.
Thanks for that, Piotr. Go ahead, Ms. Lou.
Diligent, you brought up a good point. Sometimes in order to tear things down, they're going to get worse before they get a whole lot better. Meaning we're not going to see a low price of eggs just now when 1 million chickens were killed. I hear people, Trump said he'd bring down the price of food.
They're still culling chickens en masse, too.
Yes.
It's not, hasn't stopped.
And cattle. and cattle. This is all part of their evil plan. But I want to follow the money again for a moment. And everybody's bringing up great points, so I don't want to be repetitive. And that is, they're going to go after the Treasury, which is under executive, and they're going to go after the Fed, which is not. And they're going to have work with Congress on that one for the charter, which we all know. But those two are joined at the hip, and that's where the money is. But we have, as you know, and you brought it up, Diligent, there is a CR coming up. We run out of money on the 30th. Now, Johnson has never, ever, ever, at least under Biden, we know that. Maybe he's less scared now and he'll do something Trump wants. But he gave Hakeem Jeffries and Mitch McConnell every single penny they wanted all along. There was never any proper appropriations. There was just keep funneling the money out, kicking the can down the road. And I have heard, now I may be wrong, that they're going to do a CR all the way to the end of the year on Biden's budget. Now, if they do that, then it must be a nod from Trump, because I don't think it would happen under a Republican Congress if he didn't give a nod to it. So there may be a reason. I certainly don't know, but it sounds pretty scary to me to be staying on Biden's budget till the end of the year. Just saying. Thank you.
Well, what I've heard about it, the Republicans keep adding cuts to it whenever they go over it in house. So maybe it's because they feel like they can't come to a resolution in time. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully you're wrong though, because we don't need to do anything under Biden's budget. We don't need to continue any of the programs that are being funded. We need to go through them with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we're not funding anything that's subverting the will of the American people. Let's go to Poet. Go ahead, Poet. Okay, let's go to Sherry. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hey, Dale.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, go ahead, Poet.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, seeing all this money being spent is really just waking us up that there is so much in our government that is inefficient that we can't keep up with. And I think we're kind of finding out that the system don't work. And right now we're seeing the Democrats with all this corruption, but as Doge keeps digging, I think we're going to see a lot of Republicans have their hands in stuff too, that is really controversial. But I think when we're thinking about forward thinking, the future of voting is going to be for the most convincing and influential AI. And we can see right now how it's kind of played out with this election. We're going away from whoever has the most influential media outlet or the most money in the media is kind of who has taken over elections up until this point, because America was fed up. And I think that's why Elon was so successful with X and helping Trump in this election. But if we can kind of think of Doge as Trump's AI system that he put in place when he became president, we're going to be looking at 4 years from now, like, who is the face of the AI that
Penny,
is the most
Penny, do you think Grok's in there scrutinizing our budget? That would be amazing, bro.
It's definitely not Grok yet, but that would be so. Well, actually, I say that because I'm using the current version, Grok 2, but they got a new version that only the employees have access to. That'd be crazy if that's what I think that they're running.
I mean, he did send two of his top software engineers into the Treasury. So there's a reason for that, right? They're definitely using some type of very sophisticated analytical software to go through all of this at scale. You're talking about two people, bro. You know what I mean? Like, they are definitely probably using some heavy resources AI wise. You raise a really good point, Poet. If you want to continue, land your plane, and then we'll go through the rest.
Yeah, and I think right now it's really easy for us to trust Elon because he's somebody that we've watched go through some pretty tough stuff, especially with his son and all of that. And he had a mission, and his mission kind of became our mission whenever we all woke up and realized how much we were being lied to. And he's 100% a gift to the American people right now. And I would totally trust, Elon's AI system to make our government efficient. But the thing that we've got to think about is Elon's not going to be here forever. He's not going to be that that person we can trust forever. So AI is going to continue to develop in a way like we didn't know. A lot of us, me included, I didn't know I was being lied to by the media, back around the COVID times. I wasn't aware of all that yet. And I think that's what these next 4 years is. As things get better, we're going to kind of calm down from this uprising inside, and it's going to be easy for the American people to be manipulated by an AI rather than the media. And as fast as AI advances, it's going to be super easy for us to be manipulated by the AI. So I think the point to be made is education is number one. Like talking to your family about what truth is and what honesty is and what to look for in a leader is what's going to be important going forward, because we're just going to be voting for a face from now on.
Yeah, critical thinking is we really need to make critical thinking great again. 100% agree with you. Let's go to Mira. Go ahead, Mira.
Hi, thank you. I know that Doge had to get in there hard and fast and start working. I think what would be really good is if Trump and Musk had a town hall type telecast, and that they would actually show the American people how the accounts payable works. How something is a bill or how it went through Congress. Okay, if you wanted to do underwater basket weaving in Kabul, and how it would go through and how it was paid. Was it transferred through automatic transfer, or was the check actually issued? If they actually showed how something should have worked as opposed to how it was working, and how they got in there and audited and found problems. I think that would allay some of the issues that people were having as to, they're getting in there and they're messing with our numbers. And of course, it's not helped. The Democrats have been on camera, Schumer and Waters, with their heads exploding. So if they could just gently show how they're doing the audits, okay?
Yeah, I think increased transparency is important.
Right. So when they get in FEMA and HHS, especially, they're going to find much more problems, and DOD. So this is not going to end. It's only going to get worse. I just think that would be a much better approach.
Yeah, transparency is always the best approach.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Diligent, can I just say something real quick? Mira, Elon did a call about 2 weeks ago. He said he's going to start trying to do them every single week on X so that we can join, and he kind of walks through everything, and then a couple of people are asking questions. But he also made it very clear that he's going to be funding a lot of people to run for local, state, and federal office. So that's going to start another type call moving forward as well. But he wants transparency, like with this $59 million that just got shoved out of USAID. He came right out, put it on X, and then said, we're clawing it back. So he's being very transparent, even with the big balls episode and all that silliness when that went on. But the bottom line is,
I think the problem is, Southern, that a lot of people don't have X, and they might not be really paying attention.
And the problem with that, and the problem with what you're saying, which you're absolutely right, which is a lot of people don't have X, and the ones who are getting information that starts on X are getting a spun version of it, or a spun version, or what I mean, it's going through a filter of the legacy media onto traditional TV or like even YouTube or Facebook. it's getting spun. And I've recently started following this really massive Democrat account, and I'm just watching it, right? I don't engage with it, and then I looked it up on Google, and then seen that it had a mirror account on YouTube and Facebook, and everything that it was pulling off of X, it was spinning in a certain light, like for instance, saying, Elon is going after people's private data and stuff, and spinning the narrative towards, that this is actually a power grab by Elon Musk and Trump of the U.S. Treasury, literally telling people that they're robbing us, even though he's the richest man in the world. It's fucking retarded, but that is what's happening. So I think it's important that we find ways to relay information to more than just X, because you raise a very good point, is that X actually, even though it has the most influential user base, it has the smallest number of users out of the big 5 social media companies. So very good point. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, hey, Diligent, just to kind of amplify that, I had a handful of things to just comment on, but on this point, for my work, dude, I'm a software engineer, and I get involved a lot with the user interface, right? And if you try to have conversations, to the last couple of gals that mentioned this, there's an idea of transparency and communicating, right? But then there's, what is the most ideal way to do that? As I've been listening to all this stuff unfold, what I really hoped would happen, and honestly, I think there was a missed opportunity, Diligent, with the way the G6ers were handled, that it wasn't communicated in an ABC, concise and simplified way. And so when we come to the Doge stuff here, I would love for, whether it's Vivek and Elon or some other folks that can speak to it, certainly not Trump, because this is not his bag, the details aren't his bag, to get up on a whiteboard and just literally walk through, here's what's supposed to happen, like 10,000 foot, and then separately, they could drill into the details. This would help, and this would go like so far into it, Diligent. And the same thing, I think, was a missed opportunity with the handling of the J6ers, not to conflate the two because they're different, but what these do, what the overlapping theme that is super important, that I think has to be handled correctly, not merely for transparency, but like everybody said, there's going to be transparency. Whether people consume it or whatever is one thing, but whether they understand it is quite another. And I really thought for the J6ers, what they really should have done is taken a month. Pam Bondi less than a week earlier had said she was going to be involved. They didn't involve her. They made Trump's whole kind of like that plan, that whole vision of what was supposed to happen look really, really bad. Not that there was no thoroughness about it, but to the average person, those are the dots that they might connect. So if she had taken some time, for example, 2, 3, 4 weeks and said, went on Sunday morning talk shows, talked about this, talked about that, and said, hey, this is what we discovered, 1,100 people that, had their rights violated, that didn't have due process, that were treated poorly, that this and this and this. And all these sort of kind of built up like a how do you want to say it? Kind of almost like, even though it's going to get attacked, an unassailable picture of essentially what is going on. Because what's going to happen now is all these people are released, and they're going to go on and they're going to talk on this show or that show, some obscure thing. Like you said, X's footprint of influence is not big enough, in my opinion. But they're going to talk. They're not necessarily charismatic. They're not going to represent themselves well. They're not going to explain their stories in a 10,000 foot level that people need to hear and understand. And what's so important about these two things is we won people over. And when I say we, I don't mean just the far right. I'm talking about this big tent that has evolved from Dave Rubin to Eric Weinstein to everybody else to center right and further. Is this notion that people have woken up when they see something that really pisses them off, that they know that they've been lied to. And if we can use some of these examples, I hate to do that, but it's, I wanted the J6ers out of there, appropriately as soon as possible. But if they could use that, take another 2 weeks, a month, whatever, and tell their stories so that when this issue is kind of discussed, not only does it lower the temperature on it, but now you've persuaded people not to like the J6ers, but to question all the bullshit that they hear. That's the theme. To question, why is she saying, why is Elizabeth Warren, fighting to the death over this topic? Well, now you have planted some seeds. If we explain this, if we, it gives people the ammunition. I think the average person can consume that. I think you need visuals. I'll be honest with you, Diligent. I think visuals go a long way. I've been doing the work that I do for a long time, and you start to talk to people about stuff that's different. You just throw open a share screen and you start, or you jump on the whiteboard together in a room and you start drawing it out. Everybody can consume a visual much faster.
We were Trump. Yeah. And I said something that I actually responded to Elon earlier Last Sunday, almost actually a week ago to the day, it was last Sunday night, not last night, but the previous Sunday, Elon held a space with the two senators, Mike Lee and what's her name? I can't think of her name.
Joni Ernst.
Ernst. And they had at the end of the call, he said that. So then you got a hot mic. At the end of the call, he said that they were going to have them regularly. I think he said every week. And so I was really hoping that we were going to get another Doge space this weekend, but we haven't seen one. I think that's a really good opportunity for Trump and Elon to show transparency with what they're doing, because that's something that's recorded that can be, broadcast to other forms of media, and it lets you can hear it right from the horse's mouth.
No, I think it's a great start, man, and they did commit to that. I remember him and Elon and Vivek mentioning that they were going to do almost like a week-side metaphorical, like a fireside chat about this topic and give updates. And I think that would be great if they did something like that. But they got to make it simple. They got to add visuals. And I think Elon being there is great. I think Trump showing up periodically is great. But I think somebody with more of a Vivek or somebody else that can
give me some graphs. Give me a spreadsheet. Give me some.
Exactly.
Yeah, give me something visual.
Exactly.
Yeah, give me something I can.
Make it kind of simple, because you can always unpack the details in a separate, more expansive kind of a format. But when you're giving those regular updates, keep it simple. Keep it to the point. And then when everybody absorbs it, then you start to drill in point by point by point. The only other thing I was going to say, man, is some people were talking earlier, and I agree with pretty much everybody, except Piotr for the most part. Although he's kind of on board, shockingly, this time around, which
I was surprised, bro. He was right on board with us. Dude,
it's almost it's almost as suspicious as the Luka trade, seeing him on board with us. So he's not him, but like just the general sentiment of like, hey, this is corrupt, this is this. Guys, we don't even know. Like, we're talking about the DEI stuff and this other, because one is who believes that money was allocated for those reasons, and not so much intended to be used that way, but actually was ever.
They made our whistleblower pretend he was a Scandinavian woman.
No,
I would just refuse, bro. If you're gonna fire me, it's gonna be for that reason, that I refuse to role play as a Scandinavian woman and participate in your virtue signaling victimhood totem pole.
100%, dude. And the thing is 100%, dude. But like, we send this 50 million here, the 63 million there. Does anybody here really believe that this money was really intended for that, or is that just the marketing? The how do you want to say, the descriptor on the budget, on the alignment of the, or the allocation of the money, is just some kind of a descriptor that's gonna like pass whatever cursory look. But then of course it gets over there and dude, we're spending, what is it, 18 or 19 million a week that we send to the Taliban. We have money that we were actually sending indirectly. If you go on StealthSpace, they detailed it for months that we were sending money. I think USAID was either directly or indirectly part of it into Lebanon, which ultimately paid the soldiers' wages for Hezbollah. Like, dude, there's stuff going on that's way, way crazier than all this kind of like low-hanging fruit bullshit that they talk about in the media. And so I don't know that any of this money that's allocated for these things, like you were saying, somebody was saying, like, teaching.
No, it's a complete scam. Right. It's a fucking scam. We all know it's a scam. Let me go to some of these other hands though, Henry. Hold on real quick. Go ahead, Jeremy. And then Sherry. Jeremy, are you there?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm there. I'm here. Sorry about that. I was just working on some stuff. Anyways, hey, look, I was just like, somebody was talking about the continuing resolution. And that's a great point where it's gonna definitely be able to stop it. And you're gonna start digging in to some of this, and we're on USAID, but there's probably corruption throughout the whole entire system, through and through. So start digging into Department of Interior, where you're seeing that we're funding maybe a conflict of interest, where we're funding immigration lawyers to fight against our own self for immigration, like Acacia Center for Justice, I think it is. I had a post on it, but we're giving them $1.1 billion for immigration. And then you start breaking down the codes into FEMA, especially refugee and unaccompanied children that FEMA is using. It's like over $1 billion, and some of the codes that they're using for immigration. So it's just very interesting when we start to dig into this, and there's just so much data and information coming at us and stuff like that. And we're looking at Doge, and we're saying that Doge is cutting, but technically Doge doesn't cut. They're just the tool that's being used, and it's actually the administration. And so when you hear this, I hear it a lot, and then it's not really Doge that's doing it. They're just opening it up, and then Trump is making the final decision. So I think we get caught up into those semantics and stuff like that. But I mean, that's the case. But
that's because of the narrative that the Democrats are trying to spin, or the regime is making it sound like Musk is doing it all, but really it's just Trump signing off on proposals.
Correct. And I think that once we get Cash and Tulsi and RFK, once they're in there, I mean, we've got we're going to start to see even more news. I mean, this is a news hit every single day, like nonstop. Every day is going to be something new. So it's just going to keep everybody just everywhere.
It
so
has been like that. It's been crazy.
And somebody had posted it a while back, just a couple of days ago, on how it, like, New York Times can't even keep up because they can't center in where they're going with this information. And they're like, oh, I can't center in because then they can't spin up. I mean, the hostile takeover, that's the Democrats who start to hear that hostile takeover, but then it's starting to get drowned out. And then he's off to somewhere else. He's on to Gaza. Hey, what? Gaza? Now they're like, oh gosh. And so they're moving everywhere. And then once you get Cash in there, who starts dropping off information, and then Tulsi, and then you just start to see it'll be continuously. And so March 14th is a great day because I didn't even see that on my radar, but it is absolutely pretty cool. So that's where I'm at with it. And that's where I'll land right now. So trying to be quick and go. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think the media blitz that they're running, where the legacy media cannot keep up because there's so much, they're doing so much so fast. It has been funny watching them scramble and melt down in real time, trying to keep up with it all. That's been amazing. Let's go to Stefan. Go ahead, man.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? Hey, I was just going to throw out the thing with the Doge is everybody talks about the money, and we're keying in on the 2.7 million here, $1 billion there, all these dollars, but you got to follow the influence as well. And I think the key to leftist, liberal, communist, woke DEI takeover is the money cements the power, but the real thing is the influence it's leveled on individuals, organizations, and governments across the world, really. And so what I would throw out to everyone is, as we're mapping not only the money, but map the influence as well, because, and I threw a chart in the chat there. It's up on my profile as well. And I kind of try to map it out. But I think, when we talk about, direct, USAID threw some money at one org, and then they throw some money at another org. But you can go 2, 3, 4 layers deep. But ultimately, if you're a nonprofit or a governmental institution or a church or any number of beneficiaries, and 50% of your donation income is coming from one source, you're going to do whatever they tell you to do, and you're going to look the other way, or you're going to sing the story that they want you to sing, the tune they want you to sing. So I just throw out, as people are looking, and there's going to be some organizations that are going to shock you, that you're going to see that show up on these lists, and it's going to be bad. But you need to look at where the influence is being leveled, and where that influence is going. Because at the end of the day, this was a massive influence campaign on a global scale, and USAID is probably one only several. We're looking at USAID now, and I think there's probably others that are going to shock us even more. But this is all about influence. It's all about exerting influence on different orgs and different levers of society to get the taxpayer and get the American people to be doing what they wanted us to do. So the money kept the people in control and allowed them to consolidate power, but it's the influence that globalists and socialists are ultimately always after. So cool. But thanks for letting me come on.
Guys, hey, Diligent, the White House just announced they've established an official channel on Rumble.
Yeah, that was earlier today.
That was this morning.
Yep. That was a good one. Let's go to Champ. Go ahead, Champ.
Oh, hey, Diligent. If you don't mind, I'm going to give a plug in for Ryan Mata and his documentary. It has a lot to do with the topic being discussed. And USAID and other government agencies basically aiding and abetting child trafficking and government takeovers. And so if you guys have 2 hours, give it a watch. It's really informative. And I did post it in the, I don't know if it's the purple pill, but you can go there and I recommend it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
That's Ryan Matta. If you guys need to search him, and it's his pinned post on his profile. Thanks for that, champ. And yeah, down there in the purple pill. Let's go to CJ and then Sherry, and then I'm gonna I just want to say shout out to Penny and Insurrection Barbie for co-hosting the space. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to help us out. Love your work. Make sure you guys are following them. Subscribe if you can. And if you want to support the work that I do on the ground or in spaces, you can do that is by turning on notifications for my account. That way, when I host a space or put out news, you get pinged. And I have a subscribe button on my profile. I will be hosting a subscriber-only after space immediately after this one, so you guys can give me feedback. If you want to bitch at how I do things, the best place to do it is there. Pink button, $5 a month on my profile. Thanks. All right, let's go to I said Sherry, right? Go Sherry.
Hey, thanks, Diligent. I won't be long. Hey Dale, hey Penny, hey Barbie. And I have a question for the smart people on this panel, because we heard Tom say this is the tip of the iceberg a while back, and I agree with that, and it's exciting to see it happen. But my question is, and I don't know if Good Logic's still up here, how long do we think like the lawfare and courts can tie this up? Because I think we are all on the same page. We see the money laundering and all the kickbacks and the rhinos on both sides. But how long, once this is exposed, can they, because we have 2 years unless we get out, the vote for the midterms, which we have to do. So like how long can the lawfare hinder us from that's my question. I
don't think it's something that we can predict, right? It's because it's going to vary from judge to judge.
I got you. So, okay. That's what worries me.
Trump is working pretty fast. They already appealed the freeze, the federal freeze on the foreign money. They already appealed that, and they tried to appeal the stay during the appeal. So I think they're on it. If the DOJ works fast, I think they can get in front of it.
They have teams of attorneys. They have hundreds of attorneys. So it's not like there's no one working on it. I can tell you that much. And if you don't mind, Diligent, I was just going to quickly say that Tucker clip, why I wanted to tell everyone about it is because it directly funded George Soros. He was actually trying to take away an independent court overseas through just ridiculous poll funding. They were trying to get everyone over there to agree with him, but we were paying for all of it. So it's very fascinating. It's a quick clip. Go watch that today. It's on Tom Finn's profile.
And just to make you more annoyed, Diligent, one more thing. Tucker Carlson just came out with a interview where 50% of the arms that we sent to Ukraine and the CIA are selling it to the Mexican cartels right now.
Right. Not surprising at all. It's disgusting. CJ, go ahead. Last words to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate everything you do, Diligent, Insurrection, Penny. We're with the Spark Free Press, and I just wanted to say that, we really got to kind of have like a pincer attack, like the way they're doing. We have to have the media kind of come alongside them and actually expose this aid, because realistically, I mean, they basically told us they were giving away millions of dollars for like transgender nonsense. They've told us that before, but now the media understands that really there's no reason to have a transgender, $100 million program, which is, it's all just money laundering. So it's how the media perceives it. So along with the courts, we as the media kind of got to keep pushing it out there that we shouldn't be throwing hundreds of million dollars out for really nothing at all. So I think we're really a big part of it here. We appreciate everything you're doing, man.
Thank you, CJ. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that I think it's prudent. It's important. It's actually, we have to keep the same amount of pressure on that we did during the election. I keep saying this because it's so important. We literally have to keep that same momentum, that same pressure that we did during the election right now. Every time that we see an opportunity to apply pressure and get something done via media, we do so, because our counterparts in the legacy media are working ultra hard to derail, Trump's agenda and the work that Doge is doing. And shout out to Doge, my sponsor. Their link is in the Jumbotron. Check them out if you're into crypto. They're pretty badass. But yeah, they're trying to derail, and so we have to do our part and keep the pressure up using this platform, using our posts, whatever resources that we can in the information war, because our enemies are not sleeping. They're constantly working to sabotage Trump's agenda and even Elon's and attack them in any way, that shape, or form that they can. So hopefully we all just stay vigilant and keep trying to share the truth and highlight hypocrisy and make sure that, if we can, people see, or Trump sees, that there are certain things that need to be fixed along the way that maybe he can't, it's a lot. There's a lot of work to be done, and they probably aren't going to see all of it. And we don't need to start, blaming people if something gets missed along the way. Point it out and keep pointing it out until it gets fixed. That's how we get as much done as possible. But I'm going to wrap up the space. Thanks, you guys. Love you guys. And I'll be launching a subscriber-only space immediately afterwards. Everybody have a great night. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.